Confirming in his head that he was waking up, Subaru's mind immediately grasped how good it felt. The pillow feels different, huh? Smells better, too, definitely higher class than usual, he muttered. Subaru savored the feel of the blanket and the fine scents around him as he sat up in bed. A glance was all it took to confirm this was a room meant for the upper class. The bed he had slept in was a luxurious king size that could fit 5 people with room to spare, while the room itself, spanning roughly 90 square feet, felt oddly spacious with only the bed furnishing it. The quality of the painting on the wall is so high it makes the room feel lonelier, huh? A guest room, then. Now fully awake, Subaru gently swung his legs over the side of the bed and checked his physical condition. He rotated his shoulders and stretched his legs before cautiously pulling at his clothes to inspect his abdomen. Gingerly, he touched where the wound had been. Abdominal wound, totally gone. No bruises. Of course, no scar, either. This hack is pretty awesome to not leave sewing marks. Assuming my big scene wasn't all just in my imagination, anyway. He recalled the harrowing string of events leading up to his abdomen being deeply slashed. Subaru, an ordinary Japanese schoolboy, had been abruptly summoned to another world in a painfully cliched manner. Facing death, on multiple occasions, had become his new reality. That he was still alive was thanks to a miraculous series of coincidences. But how much time has passed since then, no way to tell, huh? Looking around the room, he found no calendars, clocks, or anything similar to indicate the passage of time. The golden, glowing crystal above the door stood out, but the darkness beyond the window told him it was night. That revelation came as news to him. Slumping his shoulders, Subaru let out a deep breath before finally voicing the inescapable conclusion on his mind. Any way you slice it, I managed to survive long enough to attempt on my life, huh? He flopped back onto the bed, staring at the ceiling as he counted how many times the bowel hunter slashed his body. The wounds heal, but astral wounds remain. First time I got hit in the stomach, I heard a bell or a ring. It healed me, and the pain wasn't as bad as what I felt in the alleyway. But being in that fight with the bowel hunter, it's like it made my body tougher, stronger somehow. As if each hit wasn't just breaking me, it was rebuilding me for something more. The memory of each demise sent a shiver down his spine. Armed robbery, stray blows, and slashes to the gut, every time, it had been some form of blade. Subaru decided he didn't want to see anything sharp anytime soon. Still, he couldn't ignore the fact that he had finally moved forward without through hundreds of cuts or bruises. It was a small victory. The fact that he was alive after sustaining a plainly lethal wound led him to a logical conclusion. Considering the situation, this is some badass power, self-healing magic, huh? Subaru muttered to himself, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. The pain from his wounds had faded, leaving him feeling almost invincible. An image of her flickered in his mind, the lilac-eyed girl with silver hair. Sattler. He couldn't help but feel a sense of pride, remembering how she dealt the final blow to the bowel hunter, encasing her in ice like some twisted ice sculpture. After all, she'd done it once before. But this time, it wasn't just her, he had done it himself. That was a first. Guess I'm not just relying on her anymore, Subaru mused, a cocky grin spreading across his face. I can handle this on my own now. Given the circumstances, Subaru reasoned that the guest room he was resting in likely belonged to a mansion owned by Sattler. Then again. He sighed, his thoughts swirling as he tried to piece together his current situation. For now, one thing was certain, he had survived. Subaru glanced toward the door and let out a dissatisfied sigh. The lack of information about his current situation was starting to gnaw at him. Normally, when you wake up in a strange place, there's a pretty girl at your bedside saying, "Are you awake?" He muttered to himself, and there weren't any pretty girls when I was summoned, either. For a summons, this one's definitely third rate. Crossing his arms, Subaru grumbled, no armies to slice through, no meaningful encounters so far. If this were a game, it'd get a 2-star rating at best. With no answers falling into his lap, Subaru resolved to take matters into his own hands. Guess I'll do some recon and make myself comfortable. Practically leaping to his feet, Subaru strode toward the door. Cool air flowed through the open doorway, brushing against his skin and sending a chill up his bare feet. Stepping into the corridor, he paused to take in his surroundings. The hallway stretched endlessly to his left and right, its warm-toned walls and floors bathed in an eerie silence. Subaru frowned. It's so big, it feels like a palace, he muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Can't even tell if anyone's here. Tiptoeing down the hall, Subaru scowled at the oppressive quiet. There were no sounds of footsteps, voices, or even the faint rustle of movement. It was unsettling. "It's too quiet, even for nighttime," he said under his breath. "Makes me not want to yell, just in case something, or someone, dangerous is listening." Though his natural impulse was to shout, "Is anybody here?" Subaru held back. He hadn't yet determined if this place was safe. For all he knew, the assassin with a fondness for belly slitting might have returned to finish the job. Still, Subaru wasn't the type to let fear paralyze him. Dad always said, life must be lived, and I think he's right. With renewed determination, Subaru moved forward. He walked for what felt like ages, but something was off. The corridor didn't seem to have any turns or intersections. "I've been walking forever, but it's still a straight shot," Subaru muttered, craning his neck to look both ways. "Is that even possible?" Turning around, he decided to backtrack. But as he moved, something caught his eye. A familiar painting hung on the wall, a serene forest scene at night. Subaru frowned. "Wait, wasn't this painting right in front of me when I came out of the room?" Crossing his arms, he stood in front of the artwork, scrutinizing it. Unless he'd somehow been walking at a snail's pace, there was only one explanation. Either the floor's moving without me noticing, or the corridor loops around. He snapped his fingers. "It's like a trap in an RPG." Testing his theory, Subaru opened the nearest door. Inside was an empty, no-frills room with nothing of interest. A looping corridor with random rooms, Subaru mused. "So if I don't find the right one, I can't escape. Great. That'll only take me, what, hours? Days?" He wiped the sweat from his brow, a grimace spreading across his face. "If I don't figure this out soon, I'll go hungry, lose my mind, and then my body'll follow." With a resigned sigh, Subaru made a decision. "Fine. If the first room was the goal, I'll just stay there and wait for someone to show up." Twisting the doorknob of what he thought was his starting room, Subaru stepped inside. But instead of the bare chamber he'd woken up in, he found something entirely different. A library. The space was massive, its shelves crammed with books that reached up to the ceiling. It looked like the kind of archive that might take a lifetime to explore. Before he could fully process the change, a voice cut through the stillness. "How do you manage to look so irritating without even trying?" Startled, Subaru turned. Standing amidst the sea of books was a girl with curly hair, glaring at him with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. "Man, here in a place full of books and I can't read a single one, what a bummer." His breath caught when he looked all around the bookshelves, unable to find a single one with the title on its spine in Japanese. It wasn't some sort of alphabet, either, rather, these were characters like those he saw in the royal capital, the characters in common use in that world. Subaru let out a sigh as he looked over the characters he couldn't read no matter how hard he tried. Looking all over someone else's bookshelves, and signing on top of that, "Are you trying to offend, I wonder?" Perhaps I should respond in kind. "Your pretty face is a waste if you're that prickly. Come on, smile, smile. I am simply pretty by nature. I suppose my contemptuous sneer should be enough for the likes of you." Putting the tips of her fingers to her cheeks, the girl formed a cruel smile. Betty was a sweet, lovely girl, a sight he'd seen several times in this world already. She looked younger than felt in the slums, no more than 11 or 12 years old. Her frilly hairstyle matched her ornate dress, both framing her lovely face. Her pale, cream-colored hair was worn long, distinctive for its swirling rolls. If she'd only smiled properly, there was no one's heard she'd failed to melt. She held a large book in her hands as she sat on a wooden footstool, from which she looked up at Subaru. "You know big words like contemptuous sneer, huh, and you're in a bad mood because I got it right in one go. My bad. I've been doing stuff like this since way back." Subaru Nitsuki had a knack for picking the right answer to difficult questions with many options, without hints, on the first try. In the past, Subaru had unwittingly ruined many a scheme like that. The corridor from before made one more on the list. "All my hard work constructing the domain, all for naught, just like that, it is quite horrid. I suppose GMs would want me to trigger all their events instead of skipping to the end, so I get it. My bad, my bad." Subaru made a light wave of his hand in apology while the girl glared at him with half-lidded eyes. Apparently, it was this girl's scheme that Subaru's thoughtless act had foiled. "Well, let's make that water under the bridge. Could you tell me where this is?" "HMPH. It is my archive, my sleeping quarters, my private chambers, perhaps. Shouldn't that make me feel kind of sad for you? I mean, you don't have your own bedroom to sleep in." That's horrible. Or about you using a library as your private chambers, maybe I should just laugh. Are those remarks intended with a touch of teasing, I wonder? Exclamation mark quote. The annoyed girl replying with blunt sarcasm, who calls herself Betty, puffed out her cheeks and advanced upon Subaru. I am finally reaching the limit of my patience. You should be put in your place a little, I suppose. Hey, whatever you're planning, let's not. I'm just an ordinary guy, no combat ability at all here. His eyes became smaller and damper as his body made tiny quivers in a showy pose. But the speed of the girl's soft footsteps increased. Stay right there. Suddenly, Subaru was assailed by a feeling like a child up his spine. The girl, already before his eyes, stretched out her hand all the way to Subaru. Subaru froze as the girl, her height not reaching near his upper chest, stared at him with pale blue eyes. His skin broke out in goosebumps as a quiet, high-pitched ringing echoed inside his skull. Is there something you wish to say? As the girl posed her question, he unfroze for a moment. Subaru searched for the best thing to say during the instant he had been permitted. Subaru's gaze wandered as his lips quivered. It's not gonna hurt, is it? Should I applaud your devotion to your flippant tongue, I wonder? Speaking with a tone of genuine admiration, the girl reached her hand to Subaru's chest. Her palm pushed against his tits, her fingertips pressing softly against the surface. It felt ticklish, and, the next moment, Subaru felt like his entire body was on fire. Something was running wild inside him, making him feel like he was on fire from the tips of his fingers to the very ends of his hair. The eerie pain was as if a finger of flame were tracing his internal organs. His vision darkened. When Subaru came to, he had fallen onto his knees, a large amount of tears flowing from him. It seems you did not faint. Perhaps you are as sturdy as I heard. What did you do? Drill lowly. I simply interfered with the mana inside your body. Does the circulation feel slightly off, I wonder? The girl calmly murmured as she knelt down and jabbed a finger into Subaru's body. Well, it would be good to confirm whether you had hostile intent or not. And, for your rudeness toward my hard work, your mana should be confiscated before letting you go, I suppose. Subaru, having reached his limit, was unable to remain upright from the jab, his head falling to the floor. Despite this, he was able to slowly use his neck, looking up as the girl glared down at him with a sadistic smile. You're not human, are you? And I don't mean your personality. You are quite slow to grasp that for someone who has met Pucky already. The girl looked down with amusement as Subaru crawled. She looked younger than her choice of words hinted at, feeling like the sort of little girl who'd ripped the wings off an insect in a cruel game. Correction, your personalities, inhuman, too, surely a sublime being far beyond your ability to measure, human. It was an overly glacial statement coming from the lips of a little girl. Subaru felt the inside of his chest smolder, but he had no strength left to describe the heat with words. Subaru consciousness sank into darkness against his will. Geez, I just woke up and I'm getting knocked out again. If you died here, your husk would be troublesome to remove. I shall speak to the others. Don't say husk, it makes me sound like an insect, you little brat. Subaru returned to sleep once more, unable to move even his frivolous tongue. With that thought, the ring on his back spins in unison, responding to mana absorption.